What a day for state of the franchise to return as we got a whole bunch of stuff going down with the first day of training camp practices kicking off. Obviously, we heard from Kyle Shanahan the last 2 days in a row. We've heard from John Lynch. We've heard from some players, Brock today, amongst others. But we got a lot of news to talk about. But of course, we also got some play on the field to talk about. So, you know the vibes. Smash that like button, drop your spicy sourdoughs in the chat, and let's talk about it right now. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. Oh, it's good to be back in the saddle with my guy, Jason Aponte. How are we vibing today, my boy?
Amazing. And regardless, there's going to be some uncomfortable things that we have to talk about today, but that's the ebbs and flows of an NFL season. And I think no sort of 49ers news from training camp or anything like that would be complete without at least a little bit of panic, a mini heart attack, some things to be concerned about. Just another day in 49ers land. But hey, good to see you, man. Took some time off, and I'm glad you did too. But we're back, man. It's over now. It's football season again.
Yeah, dude. Taking a break, I think, is a vital part of content creation. You got to be
Mm-hmm.
able to take a step away. We spent time with our families, and now back in the saddle, ready to go. We got players on the field today. Where do you want to start? Do we want to start with the main stories, or should we bury the lead? Maybe talk about some of the takeaways from practice. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
push the ball into your court. I'm gonna Steph Curry it over to you. I'm gonna let you make the shot.
Hey, I think we should start with the Brandon Ayuk stuff. I don't. Let's not bury the lead, right? Like let's not bury the lead here. So,
Okay.
so around the league, right? CD Lamb hasn't shown up, and it was largely assumed that Brandon Ayuk reporting when you get the Schefter bomb, you get the Rappaport bomb. You're like, wow, that's really cool that he showed up. So in my mind, you already start to think it's a hold in, and it was confirmed today by Kyle Shanahan that it was. But him also showing up, I am choosing to be optimistic about it, and he's there in good faith. Obviously, being fined is part of it, but I think again they're committed to getting this thing done, and I think it's just going to be more face-to-face stuff. So I took it as good news. Now we hear today that it's a hold in, but I'm not concerned about that. But the Brandon Ayuk stuff, I think we're getting to a better place. And when you hear what John Lynch said, when you hear what Kyle has been saying about it, because apparently Kyle said today, neck and back is sore, and he's also holding in, but they expected that fully. Sounds like there's a little bit of good faith going on right now in the negotiations, and I'm gonna choose to use that as something that I feel is optimistic.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we feel the same way because we haven't talked about this yet. And, being able to see Brandon Ayuk show up to practice, shout out to Matt Barrows for capturing this video from training camp of the Athletic. I had very similar feelings. I felt like there's a couple solutions at the end of the road, right? Brandon Ayuk is either playing on his 5th-year option and they do some potential tag and trade at the end of the year, or they get a contract done and they get the negotiation taken care of. We move on. I look at it in the sense of that the negotiation is definitely still in play because if it was you're playing on the 5th-year option, Brandon, we're not
Yep.
giving you a contract. You got to show up. And just like John Lynch said yesterday, he expects all his players to practice. So if it was an agreed to situation that BA was going to play on the 5th year, him practicing, I think, could be an indication of that. I think the way that I'm choosing to look at this is the fact that BA showed up. One, I think is huge. Two, he's out here at practice. You can see him in street clothes. But to me, it signals maybe there's still hope at the end of that tunnel that leads to a contract extension, because I think that's ultimately what most 49er fans want. Now, I've seen, of course, we know how 49er fans get very passionate about
Mhm.
their team and these contract negotiations because it's been ongoing, feels like forever now, every year like clockwork. So my takeaway from this is that they're talking. They're
Mhm.
they're they're having the conversations. I think being face to face is also helpful. And what we've heard from Brandon Ayuk, he's been in the building throughout the offseason. So I'm taking Brandon Ayuk being a hold in as a very positive step towards getting something done.
100%. And that's exactly how I feel. And I felt a lot better about it when I heard John Lynch speak yesterday about we started our negotiations a lot earlier than we usually do. He did preface that by saying that and then finished with it's been challenging. And he also said that the booming wide receiver market had little to do with where they're at right now. And and one other thing that he said that was really good was I want to keep this private. I think he's earned that. So again, all of these things, like if we're sitting here and we're just listening to what they're saying, it all seems like yes, we're still in the middle of negotiations, but it's nowhere near as contentious as people would at least like to believe or push a narrative about. And I think that's the part where, Brendan's in our long-term plans. Perfect. That sounds like it's matching with the negotiations right now. I just hope that this gets done sooner than later so we can get Brandon on the field and we can get this thing rolling because, like I said, I would hate for this to bleed into training camp, into preseason, God forbid, week one. I think it's imperative that the 49ers start rolling as soon as the season starts.
Absolutely. And we heard George Kittle talk about he likened contract negotiations to braces and just how terrible the situation. Literally said he hated every single second of the entire process. Do you think these negotiations can have an impact on players' performances throughout the year? I mean, we heard from Nick Bosa, obviously he missed all of training camp and the preseason. And I think, there's a bit of a callus you need to build up of getting your legs under you, getting that football conditioning under you. You can do all the conditioning you want, but getting hit by 315-pound guys play in and play out, that there's a different type of endurance to that. So, do you think that we are starting to develop a bit of a trend that when we see negotiations kind of take like start to seep into training camp, that it actually does maybe impact the performance in not the most positive way?
I think we have our trends. Let's do the math. George Kittle has a down season off of signing his contract. Deebo Samuel has an injured and down season after the year that he had the 49ers in his backpack. Nick Bosa admitted that he just wasn't right without training camp. That's my biggest fear. That is literally my biggest fear. It was never about the dollar amount or how much he's going to get or what this means down the line. It's can you get in here and just get rolling? Like we don't need this right now in this season where everybody is talking about running it back, Super Bowl contender, everything. The last shoe that needs to drop is this Aiyuk thing until we find out today that Trent Williams actually wants more money, which I actually have an optimistic take about that as well too. I think that could be
Good.
very good news as well. But again, right now, this team with the soft schedule beginning the first 6 weeks, the 49ers have a chance to get out of the gates and really build up a strong 5-1 record, 6-0 record before the schedule gets tougher. And you do that by having continuity during training camp and getting out of the gates right away and taking care of business. Like I don't want to see them in week 2 against the Minnesota Vikings have a tough game. No, steamroll them. You're better than them. You are better than them. Show us that you're better than them and get out of the gates and let everybody know there's no hangover. We're not here to mess around. We're getting back to exactly what we did last year. And I think that all starts with continuity and having everybody in there working together to the same goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, man, I want to see BA. I'm really excited with the notion that BA will be available for training camp because both you and I know he's been the best player at 49ers camp the past 2 seasons in a row. He's just he competes, play in, play out. He makes the entire team better, putting that work with the defense. Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore. It's one of my favorite battles of camp is who's guarding Aiyuk and how is it going to play out? And, I think when you see Charvarius and Aiyuk. I mean, I'm back to when we were back at camp, was like 2 years ago or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you could see that these guys were pushing each other, and the competitive fire was making them better. So you always want your guys in camp. So hopefully the light is at the end of the tunnel regarding the Aiyuk situation. I feel a lot better about that because,
Mm-hmm.
we did hear those reports, from Pretty Ricky that he
Yeah.
was going to be a holdout. But thankfully, it's a hold in. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
hold in represents something getting done in the future. So I'm really excited about that. But we had a bit of a bomb dropped on our heads in the sense of I don't think we were expecting this. Um, David Lombardi did I didn't know that Trent Williams didn't have any guaranteed money left on his
Mm-hmm.
deal. So that to me, when he put that out there, I was like, oh, wow, this could be contract related. And then
Mm-hmm.
boom, sure enough, we hear from Kyle Shanahan at the podium confirms Trent Williams did not report to training camp today. It is contract related, and you connect the dots. It is most likely a similar situation to Christian McCaffrey, right, that we saw in
Mm-hmm.
OTAs.
Yeah, and I think it was Christian Darrisaw was the one who signed with Minnesota, and that kind of pushes everything into hyperdrive just a little bit, right? Like you start to see the list of highest paid tackles, and if I'm Trent Williams and I'm not in the top 5, wait, what? So this is
Yeah,
a little bit of a situation of knowing my worth and knowing what I should get, but also again, this is good news. Let's do the math. And I'm not a cap wizard or anything like that, but if the San Francisco 49ers extend Trent Williams, let's say 2 seasons, maybe 3, let's just say 3, and they allow Trent Williams to explore his options with retirement. I know we've heard that a lot. It
right,
opens up cap space this season, next season, and the season after that. So what does that
right.
mean? Brandon Aiyuk this year can get a deal done. They have enough money to do it now, but that helps. They can roll over cap for Lenore, Mooney, Purdy, and you lock in the best left tackle in football. For everybody that has an issue with this offensive line, I want to ask you this. This should be the scariest notion out there. Imagine what this offensive line would look like without Trent Williams. Imagine. Just imagine.
We've
Now,
seen
look,
it.
no disrespect to Jalen Moore. No disrespect to Jalen Moore, right? And I think that's another good thing, right? Is that he's going to get more reps and possibly, who knows? He can grow. But
I thought he
imagine,
grew last year, but that's
right?
another topic. Yeah.
But imagine now this offensive line without Trent Williams. I shudder to think about that. We've literally been looking for the replacement for Trent, right? Like who's going to take over? I don't think you're ever going to find a player of Trent's caliber because that's how highly I think of him. I think of him as the best left tackle in football. I think everybody does. But if this is going to go this way and he wants his extension, he wants his guaranteed money, that's fine. It can still benefit the 49ers cap-wise and still allow them to bring back Purdy, allow them to, well, Purdy's not going anywhere, but allow them to bring back Mooney Ward, lock in Lenore, possibly see what happens with Hufanga and others, and it can widen the Super Bowl window with this group again. So again, I have a good vibe about this, not a bad vibe.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like the whole thing we've heard all offseason about Deebo Samuel is this is the last year of Deebo's guaranteed money. And that's why the rumors of him potentially getting traded or the 49ers moving on to him was centered around the guaranteed money running out. Well, that's exactly where Trent Williams is. And we do know Trent Williams in this situation has every stitch of the leverage, wouldn't you say? I mean, when you're the best left tackle in football and it's unquestioned by every player, by every coach, by not that it matters what every fan thinks, but I would say predominantly most fans, although lacking overall O-line knowledge, they know that Trent's that guy. So I don't think the 49ers would feel confident at all going into the season without Trent Williams at left tackle. So I would have to imagine it gets done. It's just a matter of when, right?
And again, they knew this. They had already been talking. Again, Kyle Shanahan said there's nothing that this organization isn't ill prepared for,
It
right?
dates
Things
back
don't.
to OTAs and mandatory minicamp.
Yeah, and the same thing, right? There was inklings about Christian McCaffrey and his contract. Okay, we just get it done, right? Like, and they find a way to get it done. And Christian McCaffrey looked at the same thing. I don't have guaranteed money. Give it to me. And again, there's a way for this to benefit the other way. But the 49ers are absolutely not going to look at Trent Williams and say, well, you want to hold out? We're not paying you. Extremely doubtful. He has all the leverage. And if this team has Super Bowl aspirations, there's no way that they make it there without Trent Williams, regardless of his age.
Right. And, I think we look at like the quarterback being the leader of the team, but I think we all know internally Trent is the leader of leaders. He is one of the, foundational pieces in that locker room. And he has the respect of the all pros. Like the all pros are looking up to Trent. What does Trent have to say? Like he's that guy. He's the only guy in the 49ers locker room who has 2 lockers and stanchions and his own little club section. He's that guy. He's the silverback. That's that dude that you put out, just like we see at the front of the line. The reason why Trent is out there, because he's that dog to strike fear into the hearts of all these alpha pro athletes that are going up against him, because he is that much of a difference maker. So he's going to get paid. I'm not concerned about that. I think this was just a surprise. I think, would you characterize this situation? It's just like another one. Like I wasn't really anticipating it, but it makes sense when you hear it and the rationale behind it. And again, you noted that they will have an opportunity to be able to open up more cap space, right? Because you take the base salary, you convert it to signing bonus, and that's how you get the guaranteed money, but then it opens up the cap space like we've seen from the restructures that have happened throughout the last couple of years. So I think we hear the same tune on that one.
100%. And the 49ers have aspirations of absolutely rolling over money. And now rolling over money with the expected cap increase, whatever that is at this point, they're financially setting themselves up for whatever comes their way. And again, we're going to have next season, we're going to have players who say, all right, yeah, now I want to get paid unexpectedly. Not unexpectedly, but I wouldn't characterize this as a shock, maybe just a mild surprise. And at the same time, it's when you start to break down the numbers and you look at a guy who has been contemplating retirement for a long time, I think is seeing this team and is, I will say, rejuvenated by Brock Purdy being under center with him, because he's been at the forefront of talking about how much he likes blocking for him. This offense was as efficient as it's ever been under Kyle Shanahan, aside from the year with the Falcons and Matt Ryan. I think there's a little bit, all of those things factor into his decision to do what he wants right now. And I don't blame him. And the other light at the end of the tunnel is any sort of extension only helps the 49ers. So this is a situation in which if you're upset that a player wants to get money, I guess that's fine. That's your opinion, your option. But when you look at it, there's multiple ways to look at this and think of it as a plus. And remember, this team is trying to get back to the Super Bowl. I think we all agree they have the best roster in football. Do they have the best roster in football if Trent Williams is not there? They have a claim to it, but it probably knocks them down a peg because he's the best left tackle in football.
Yeah, and that might be a natural transition into like our offensive line conversation, because I even see we got a super chat wanting to know about it's Gammon saying, should there be growing concerns at center? So that's already kind of the notion heading into this season. Obviously, we saw there's still an ongoing situation at right guard. Like it's still somewhat up in the air. I think we all assume it's going to be Feliciano at right guard. But Spencer Burford, Dominic Pooney, Ben Barch, all, even Nick Zakel, they're going to try to throw their hat into that ring. So there's a lot of questions that still remain on the offensive line when Trent was your one solid, solidified, foundational piece anchoring the rest of the other 4, or at least that's the perception. And so you want that guy. You want that guy for this season. So honestly, I'm I've never really been like, I think Jason, you and I were on the same page. We've had many conversations about these negotiations. Like, these teams can find the money. They can figure it out. There's loopholes, there's workarounds, there's other things that they can do to make these things work. So it's just now it's obviously getting tighter, right?
Mhm.
Because you also have to project out, like you've mentioned, Brock Purdy. So that's a part of it. So it's definitely more complicated than I think, we even truly know, but I think we can rationalize it from a high level perspective to kind of understand it, not just get emotional about like, oh no,
Mhm.
Trent's not there at camp. What are we gonna do? Like the sky is falling. It's like not necessarily. It's just business, right? And that's kind of what we're talking. We're talking about the business of football. We're not talking about the actual football on the field, right?
Yeah, 100%. And again, I never really I've lost emotional attachment to any of these things because one, I'm always going to be pro player. This is a game where and your next hit could be your last. And when this game doesn't love you anymore, they discard you. They don't let you just stick around or anything like that. Like, so I appreciate that aspect of it. So I've taken my emotions completely out of it, right? Then when you look
Yeah.
at the caliber of player, you're like, yeah, that 100% makes sense. Now, with this question, should there be growing concerns at center? I think that Brendel's obviously not there, right? I think he's still injured, still working his way back from an injury. Brad, if I'm
I
not mistaken.
haven't I haven't seen anything about an O-line status today other
Mhm,
than the news about Trent Williams, but
mhm,
we did hear that he isn't on PUP after
mhm,
having the knee tendonitis and missing all of the spring. So
mhm,
I would imagine he was out there. I would imagine we would have
mhm.
heard if he wasn't. So until I see anything that states that Brenda wasn't, I'm going to assume he was. So I'd assume
Mhm.
Brendel was back with the starters doing his thing.
Okay, good. So I think the conversation should shift from that because I think Chris Forrester loves him. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan has talked him up. I think the conversation then shifts to, is his play at the end of the last season more indicative of what's going to happen this season? Because he started the season very solid. I thought he was very solid, right? There was even a time where there were rumblings about, hey, he's got to be in this Pro Bowl conversation for center. But as the season progressed, there were multiple missed blocks in the run game. It felt like the pressure was coming from straight up the. Now, does that carry over into the season? Was he dealing with that injury last season? I think that's more the conversation we should be having because I don't think there's any doubt that they're going to get away from Brendel at center, especially with the way that Chris Forrester loves him, bringing him over from the Dolphins. Again, another short shuttle king, somebody who, again, they drafted the linemen that they drafted and they brought in from undrafted free agents. They were great in short shuttle, and they really, really love that aspect because of all the pulling that they do in this offense. So I think the conversation goes from who's going to be the center, and I think it is going to be Brendel as long as he's healthy, to what is the level of play that we're going to get, and was the end of last season, a stronger indication of what we're going to see, as opposed to maybe just a blip on the radar for Brendel because he might have been dealing with an injury.
Yeah, and on top of that, I'm also my thoughts aren't just individually placed, whether it's Brendel, Banks, Burford, or Feliciano. It's the entire interior.
Mhm,
They have to play better as a unit. They have to play more consistently. Being a center myself, I understand that poor guard play affects my play. So if my guys aren't doing what they're supposed to do, and I think they are, it might look like I just completely whiffed on a block, but I was expecting a backside double and I didn't get it. And I passed it off and he went straight through, made a tackle. That can look really bad. But
mhm,
those are the things that we were seeing on tape. So yes, we also saw, like I would say, when we look at Brendel and evaluate his game, like I would say, you look at the Bengals game, he really struggled with
mhm,
DJ Reader. DJ Reader, one of the better interior defensive tackles in the league, just outpowered him. It's definitely not Brendel's game. Brendel is a finesse center. He is going to beat you on the edges. He's going to try to reach you. He's going to try to gain leverage on you by gaining your outside shoulder. He's not going to try to drive you. I mean, obviously, that's a function of it. But I think my concern is just the interior group. I want to see consistency because, Jason, we haven't seen consistency at right guard
mhm.
for going on 3 years now.
I
And
would say only when Feliciano was inserted in. Like that's when it really started to feel a lot better.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that also has an impact on your center. You're platooning with Brunskill, Burford, like you're rotating like that. It impacts the continuity. So for me, I just want the 49ers to figure out their 3 interior guys and rock with those guys. Now, I get it. It's going to, if there's an open competition, you're going to rotate. So I understand that. But for me, into the season, I want them to figure out who those three are, because throughout the year, you could see they didn't have all the confidence in Burford. And that showed its head when he got benched in the playoffs. So, again, in health, that's another thing. Banks was hurt, Brendel was hurt, Burford was hurt. They were all hurt. And so I think just moving forward, yes, is there a level of concern? Maybe a little. But I'm less concerned about the center spot. I'm more concerned about continuity between the three guys and who that's how I am viewing that situation.
See how we're talking about everybody but Trent? Trent's supposed to be the lock, right? Like we're just like, let's set it and forget it. I mean, the guy is still clearly the best left tackle in football at his age, still dominating as evidence and where he lands on top 10 player lists. Offensive lineman being up there, like I believe PFF ranked him number 7 or 4 or something like that. That's insane, right? Now it's all the other ones that we've got to worry about, and then if you don't have Trent, now we're just really, really worried. So the importance of having at least the left tackle completely figured out is super important. So yeah, again, I think you just highlighted everything I was talking about. Like in terms of, can you imagine this offensive line without Trent Williams? Could you imagine the questions I mean, people are already freaking out about this offensive line as is with Trent. Imagine is crazy. That is crazy to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And two just one thought on thinking of this offensive line without Trent Williams. I do have to tip my cap to Jalen Moore, a guy that I was completely out on heading into this training camp after kind of watching how he had struggled in spots. I mean, remember when we saw Jalen Moore come in as a rookie and fill in for Trent Williams? I think the first start he got was against the Colts in that rain game, the monsoon game at Levi's. He actually performed pretty well, but then it got into a situation where it got really bad to the point where, remember, he went in at right tackle. He got benched in that Jaguars game for Compton, and we really never saw him again. And then if Trent was hurt, it was Colton McKivitz going in. So it felt like Jalen Moore was on a bit of a slide after showing some potential. But I will say that when Jalen Moore filled in last year, I felt so much more confident in how he performed, how he executed, and how he filled in. Now, that doesn't mean I'm at all advocating for Jalen Moore over Trent Williams.
Breaking news, Brad Graham wants to bench Trent Williams for Jalen Moore. You guys all heard it, right? Clip it and send it out.
Breaking news. Brad is a Denver Broncos fan. So I do though believe that Jalen Moore has improved, but if you do anything, you need to have Trent Williams out there this year protecting Brock Purdy's blind side, right? That's really what it comes down to. That's it, right? End of conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, contracts aside, we're just talking about putting out the best offensive line that we can. There's no way you could talk about best offensive line and Trent's not on there. So, yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about play on the field. Let's talk about some of the stuff that we popped and heard from training camp today. So far, I've seen from multiple reports that – oh, hold on a second.
Uh-oh.
No, we got a highlight. So –
anyways, don't do that, because if you say hold on a second, it's well, no. If you do like hold on a second, I automatically you're about to break some horrible news, like something really bad.
I got a squirrel out of the corner of my eye as we were going to talk about some play on the field. I apologize, but let's I want to talk about this, right? I haven't seen this, so let's look at it.
Let's see.
49ers, wake up honey, 49ers just dropped Let's see what we got. Word on the streets is it's Danny Gray highlight. So we got Brock Purdy sitting back in the pocket, little Danny Gray action. Jason, have you been quietly hearing about Danny Gray throughout the offseason? What are your thoughts on
No,
that?
no. I mean, all right. So look, I've been pretty vocal about this whole Danny Gray thing, and it's
I know.
look, I really believe that Danny Gray's draft selection was supposed to be in tandem with Trey Lance. Now, do I think that Danny Gray is a bad football player? I haven't seen enough from him to even say that. I think that's the crux of this, is that he's injured.
Yeah.
He's injured all the time, right? But when you look at the 49ers and then they go out and they draft two guys, now automatically you can look at that and say, well, that's a replacement for Debo or Aiyuk, however you want to look at it. It's, well, now Danny Gray, you're on the clock here, because we know if you can't contribute on special teams, if you're not going to stay healthy, even when you're on the field, it doesn't look like there's much there. It starts to get hairy. So let's do the numbers crunch. On a 53-man roster, you've got 3 locked in: Aiyuk, Samuel, Jawan. I think Pearsall makes this roster. That's 4. I have a hard time seeing Jacob Cowing not make this team because I think he's really good at football. And then do the 49ers value Chris Conley as a veteran and as a guy who can actually step up in moments? And if you try to practice squad Danny Gray, someone's going to pick him up. So I think it's more about right now a numbers crunch for Gray, on top of the fact that he hasn't really put much on film. And that's not an opinion. That's just he's not been on the field. So Danny Gray has to do something this training camp that I wouldn't say is out of this world, but he has to really, really step up. And he has to do it in preseason games, and he has to stay on the field. So, yes, while that's nice to see, I start to think about, how do you get this 53-man roster? How many people are you going to be able to put in the wide receiver room? Who does Kyle trust? All of these things are the reason that I'm more skeptical that Danny Gray makes this roster, barring, again, a fantastic camp and preseason, and he starts to show growth as a player.
Absolutely. And I think that's all fair based on everything that we've seen out of Danny Gray. And I think you mentioned it. It is going to be a challenge to make this roster, because how many wide receivers are they keeping? 6, 7? Typically we see them keep around 6, but we've also seen it fluctuate in years past. So can Danny Gray, can he do the improbable? Because I do think that we both agree that this is a make or break season for Danny Gray. I mean, when you're medically redshirted for an entire season, it is what it is, right? So, but my thing with Danny Gray is I do think he's talented. I do think there's more than just straight speed. Obviously, for me, I was a big fan of Danny Gray coming out of SMU. So there's a little part of me that has like that. I saw it, Danny. I've seen you do it. I've also been to training camp practices, and I'm sure you've been as well. We've had days where Danny Gray was the best wide receiver at 49ers camp in years past. I don't think it was last year. It might have been his rookie year. I remember he had one day where he had like 2 touchdowns. Like, he was just balling. Now, that's where the issues lie: consistency and availability. And we both know, I say it all the time, I think the greatest measure of greatness in the NFL is consistency. So you can be great for one play, one day, one game, even one year. That doesn't mean you're great. You have to go out, do it day in, day out, and show up. And so that's what Danny Gray is up against. And I think both of us too can relate to the human element of having your back against the wall, right? Of it potentially being your last chance. And this is it. You're heading into year 3. There's no guarantees. So what I'm excited about with him is to see how he responds. And are we banking on it? No, not necessarily. But I do believe it's in there. It's just, is it a maturity thing? Again, we know there's so many things that goes into being a great football player, opportunities, things off the field, relationship with coaches, as we've seen with BA in the past. So who knows? But there is a part of me that is wanting to see it. I do believe he's talented enough to show it, We just haven't seen it consistently. And if he can't show it consistently, he won't have a roster spot.
Danny Gray has a chance to be found money, in essence, for the 49ers. It's a good
Right.
problem to have. Danny Gray takes a step and starts to put pressure on other guys. It's a great problem to have. You can never have enough wide receivers. And we already went into this training camp saying that this is the deepest wide receiver room they've had, and Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing haven't even taken a snap yet. So imagine the boost to this wide receiver room, somebody who can stretch the field vertically, possibly get in there on good snaps. It's a good problem to have, and it could be found money. I don't know if the 49ers themselves are banking on it. I think they're going to give him every opportunity to show that. But if he does, and there is always a chance that he can, then it's a good problem to have, right? Like, I don't see how that's bad. And if he becomes somebody who, again, when you look at draft picks, because Gray was in the third, right? If I'm not mistaken.
He was right after TDP.
Right. So third round, when you look at that, now there's been starters, there's been all pros, there's been Hall of Famers drafted in the third round. If you're able to pluck a solid starter or somebody who can, not a starter, he's not going to start over anybody, but someone who can take reps and be solid and be reliable, I don't think you can ask anything more of Danny Gray at this point. So look, it's an uphill battle based on the number crunch, based on other people and other factors, but it's such a good thing that that he could be taking a step. Now, should we overreact to one clip from training camp? Absolutely not.
And
Absolutely
it wasn't
not.
And to be clear, like we didn't see the route, we didn't see how he got the separation. We don't know. So it was a good catch, and he spun out of it. But
I mean,
we don't know.
Look, I'm not gonna take that clip and repost it on Twitter and say Danny Gray season incoming. It's
I am.
I know you are. What is it? Year 3 loading.
Year 3 loading with the little charger emoji right next to it, bro. Works every time.
But again, Danny Gray has a chance to be found money, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Again, so I don't think they're banking on it, but if it is something, it'll be a welcome development, and he's going to have every opportunity. Just got to stay on the field and show what he can do.
Well, I think you're 100% right when the 49ers say, when your interpretation is the 49ers aren't banking on it. They drafted 2 wide receivers. They aren't banking on him at all. Like they have, when you talk about found money and you look at Ronnie Bell, that's found money, like 7th rounder, and what he was able to do last year. He's done more in his rookie season as a 7th rounder than anything Danny has done so far, right? So I think that, but that's the beauty of camp, right? I think the conversation that we're having about Gray, you can have about multiple guys on this roster. Like, obviously, we've talked about Ambry Thomas, but you have up and coming guys like the linebacker room, the cornerbacks, defensive line, offensive. Like, we can have this same conversation with damn near every position group on this team. And I think that's what makes this training camp really exciting, because Jason, it's the first time we haven't had a quarterback controversy, a duel, at least feeling as if it was a duel for the starting quarterback job. So this is going to be one of the first times that we get to focus on a lot of other positions other than just trying to determine who is the best quarterback today. And because I think we know the answer already. It's going to be Brock Purdy day in and day out.
That's a beautiful thing. Like, how we've always clamored for that, and we just said, I want what other people have, which is like stability at the it's amazing to like wake up in the morning and realize that you don't have to answer questions or talk about the backup and who's starting and everything. And it's just like, man, this is what it's like to have a guy, like have your guy. Like this. I love it here. I love it here. You're muted still.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what I was going to talk about before I got completely distracted by the little squirrel, and that put us on a Danny Gray conversation, was Malik Mustafa. Obviously, Talanoa Hufanga starting the year on PUP. I mean, Mustafa looks like he was built in the same laboratory that Nick Bosa was built in. Right? He's just a safety. So, and you could see instantly on tape, out of Wake Forest, that he was a dog. Like, he's a downhill thumper. He's going to punch you right in the face. But today he's out here making interceptions on Josh Dobbs. From everything that we've heard out of training camp, I mean, with the status of Talanoa Hufanga at this
Mhm.
current point being unknown, you really like to hear that a rookie fourth rounder is already making plays with this defense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been on record very much with the scouting report for Jair Brown kind of mirrors Talanoa Hufanga's in terms of ball hawk, needs to work on his angles, tries to play downhill as fast, right? Like that type of thing. So if there is a chance that Talanoa Hufanga doesn't start week one, now you can have Jair in that like kind of free roaming sort of role, and Malik can get in and get downhill and become a run stuffer. And I think run defense is something that I'm vastly concerned about, like with this team and how they're going to fix it. How does Sorensen fix this? So it's good to hear this now, because what I want is I want Jair Brown to put a stranglehold on this safety role right away. Now, hearing that Mustafa has played well today, right? One day, you can't overreact to one day. That's great as well, too, because the 49ers obviously have confidence in him by drafting him. And then we really heard John Lynch before the suspension news came out say we were going to keep in touch with Tashawn Gibson. And now that's a
Yeah.
6-game suspension. So the 49ers kind of have a few, I guess, they have a few options, right, to play around with. If Malik goes out and balls out, then you're good. You don't have to worry about that. Do I think Tashawn Gibson's going to be a hot commodity after the missing 6 games? I don't think so. But if you have to make that call, you can. And he's been a starter for this defense 2 years in a row. But it's really interesting to hear all these things about this safety group, because there is uncertainty with Hufanga. Now, in an ideal world, Hufanga comes back. He's the same guy that we saw from 2 years ago, and he pairs up beautifully with Tig. And then you kick that can down the road with Malik. Maybe even have him in a role of maybe like a hybrid linebacker safety. But it is good to hear this, because we have the uncertainty of Hufanga, and you have Brown with a similar skill set to Hufanga that you can actually not miss a beat if both of those guys are where they're supposed to be on defense.
Absolutely. So I love it. I love what I'm hearing so far. Sounds like the early returns are promising. So I can't wait to see what we get. What other rookies are you excited to hear about? Obviously, we got Renardo Green, Dominic
Mm-hmm.
Pooney.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to see Pearsall for the first 3 or 4 practices, which is unfortunate, but might create more opportunities for guys like Cowing. You got Isaac Garendo, which we do actually have news on today in Schrader. And I guess let's start with Garendo. Apparently came up a little gimpy with a hamstring injury. Now, I don't know the full extent of that situation, but he did not return to practice today. So 49ers dealing with some early hamstring issues with the rookies.
Concerned already about this one, just based on his injury history and how hamstrings. It was stated today that it was hyperextended. Kyle said hyperextended. I think initially when everybody saw him go down, they started to say he pulled his hamstring. I don't know how you could tell that from like looking, right? But hyperextending, I guess, makes you feel a little bit better. But with Garendo and his leg injuries, I think that's a little bit more concerning, right? And I think based on what we've heard from OTAs and minicamp, it wasn't exactly glowing about the kid already. And I love him. Like, I love his skill set. I see exactly how he fits. He's a home run hitter, right? But it seems like a lot of people were concerned with his vision. Now, if that's the case, and now he has to miss time, which he surely will, it could put him behind the 8 ball in terms of where he falls on his depth chart. But Cody Schrader's a dog. And we always have that one running back. We have that one running back every single year. Again, you draft Trey Sermon, then you draft Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell jumps in right away. Jordan Mason became a darling for 49er fans right in training camp. This feels like the moment that Cody Schrader is about to take over and really put himself as a viable option behind Christian McCaffrey, change of pace. Obviously, Elijah Mitchell's there. Again, it would be more found money if Elijah Mitchell could stay healthy and be on the field as well, too, a little bit. But I think this is a golden opportunity right now for Cody Schrader, who already was getting rave reviews from OTAs and minicamp, but a little bit concerning for Garendo based on his injury history, in college with leg injuries.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely concerning this early on to be dealing, with the soft tissue injuries and stuff like that. So hopefully with Garendo, it's not a long-term situation. But you mentioned Cody Schrader, dude. I'm hyped on Schrader. I really do feel like we got the poor man's Blake Corum, as an undrafted free agent.
Mm-hmm.
Same build, almost identical testing times. They have, in my opinion, a similar running style and a kind of a one cut. They have a little bit of a physical nature to them. I don't think Schrader is as violent of a runner as Corum is, but when you look at the 5'8", 205 builds, they kind of have that one cut balanced glide. And I think that is perfect for inside zone running when you are taking your zone steps and it's typically 1, 2, third foot plant and you're cutting into the hole. And that's where I'm like looking at Schrader of like, dude, this guy, you could see the vision at Mizzou. Like clearly he has the vision. He put up the most rushing yards for any running back in the SEC. So I'm excited about Schrader. I really am, dude. I didn't have much expectations of him when they originally drafted him. I didn't really know who, or once they signed him, but through doing, researching some of his game film and then seeing some of the workouts and kind of pulling the physical traits kind of profile, and you put it together and you try to think of how he could fit, you're like, oh, this might be found money. This might be someone who could make a running back tradable.
Yeah.
Maybe. We got two veteran guys coming in on the last year of their deals. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey ain't going anywhere. So that could be something we've seen 49ers move running backs in the past. So that, if anything, that running back room has been, I guess you could say Elijah Mitchell has been
Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
A stable second stringer.
Oh, yeah. You got to put your mic back on the other one.
I don't know why it knocked
Got
me
it.
out like that.
Yeah.
Now, behind him, it's just, we have a lot of faith in Mason, but I think if you can get more of that type of production out of guys on the back end, it could present more options for maybe getting some capital in return. So, yeah, man, I'm excited to see. We got a couple of super chats. Let me get to Gammon. I don't want to skip out.
Yeah.
He says, is this an accurate statement? 49ers will struggle in the trenches this year in run defense and pass protection. Take a step back on special teams coverage. I'll kick it to you first. What do you?
Yeah, the run defense is worrying. It's troublesome, especially on the inside. There's a lot of tape of Javon Hargrave being pushed over gaps, like a few gaps, like moved out of the way type stuff, and Eric Armstead, obviously, who is now in Jacksonville, he's a run stuffer, right? And then you bring in Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott of NBC. You bring these guys in to like kind of fill in this role, and yet I couldn't resist. The run defense is definitely, it's not something that I'm like overly panicked about, but it is something that needs to improve, right? I think what we saw last season from the secondary was them be much better against the pass, obviously because of Lenore and Ward and how good they were. But the run defense is concerning, especially now that we're probably bracing for a Dre Greenlaw absence to start the season. Now, can Devondre Campbell step in, and the 49ers are actually asking him to bounce back from the way he's been playing in Green Bay? It's more troublesome. I'm more worried, concerned about the run defense. And, Javon Hargrave looks like he's in great shape, but to be fair, at defensive tackle, he is much more of a pass rusher than he is a run defender. So, yes, how could you not be? And I think, again, that's going to fall at the feet of not only the defensive line, but Nick Sorensen. Nick Sorensen's got to find a way to get this done, because I think a lot of the blame shifted last season to Steve Wilks. And it was easy to throw it at Steve Wilks, right? Because he is the defensive coordinator. He does oversee that. But now Sorensen and Staley have to find a way to patch this up, but the defensive line has to get after it a lot better at this time.
Yeah, I mean, the run defense, you bring in Malik Collins, right? I think we look at him as more of a pass rusher first.
He's a pass rusher. Jordan Elliott is the run stuffer.
Right. So, yeah, I I think it remains to be seen. And so as a result of that, that can lead you to believe they could take a step back in that regard without Eric Armstead, because when Eric Armstead was available and healthy, he was creating havoc on the interior. So it will be very interesting. Like Yetur Gross Matos, is he a part of that conversation? Is he going to be a base down defensive end? That's going to be interesting to see how he creates an impact. So can Kalia Davis be a guy that the 49ers finally rely on the interior as well?
Kevin Givens is a rotational guy. Like that, this is gonna be a hodgepodge of people trying to replace Eric Armstead. And the same thing for the edge as well, too. You know, like because we heard that Leonard Floyd went down today as well, too, but he returned to practice at least. And that's another good sign, because Leonard Floyd doesn't miss games. That's part of the allure of having him, is not only the fact that he's a professional pass rusher who can get you 10 sacks situationally, is that he's available all the time. So we're often running with the injuries right off the bat, right? Like we hear about Floyd and it's like, oh my God, already. And then last year, and then right away,
before camp even started with Ricky Pearsall, right. People started losing their minds. So I'm like, oh my God, here we go.
I'm glad you brought him up, because that one kind of hurt a little bit, right? And what I mean by that is, everybody can run routes against air. If you can't run routes against air, you're in deep trouble. But I want to see Pearsall when the pads are on and they're popping. I think that's when we start to figure out who this player really is. We all love the pick. We all see the vision. But that's the disappointing part, is the hamstring happens outside of the facility. And now, if it is only 4 days, fine. You know, I guess then it's all moot. But it would have been great, especially with Brandon Aiyuk holding in. Pearsall could have gotten all of these reps right now. So yeah, if it's 4 days, fine, right? Like it's no issue. But it is a hamstring. Hamstrings linger. So I think that's the most disappointing part about that, is that Pearsall was going to get a chance to go against Ward and Lenore, and we were really going to see, can he get off of press man? And I think that's probably the one overlapping concern for 49er fans. You can do it in college. You have to do it up here with the big boys. And I think that's the part that really kind of was disappointing about hearing Ricky Pearsall's injury.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how that manifests itself throughout training camp. But the other one was 49ers will struggle in pass protection. Obviously, if Trent Williams isn't there, they'll struggle with pass protection. But assuming Trent is there, I'm actually of the mindset that they will improve. And again, I think I've laid it out of what I need to see for this group to improve. And it starts with interior consistency up front. And then you get a second year of Colton McKivitz knowing what it is to be a starting left tackle or right tackle in this league for an entire season, all the way through to the playoffs. I mean, I didn't hear Aiden Hutchinson's name all that much against Detroit, and they were going back and forth all game. So I think with Colton, he did improve as the year went on. Now, that's not a popular take to say out loud, but when you had 3 sacks in your very first game, I think he ended the year with 9 sacks. I mean, the differential there just from one game to then your remaining 19 giving up 3 to a ratio of 6. Just that alone shows improvement. And again, having stability at guard will also help. It's a team game on the offensive line. And I feel like when people talk about offensive line, they don't talk about it that way. These guys rely on each other, and they have to. And if they don't, if one guy's messing up, it messes everything up. And that has been the consistent issue with the 49ers offensive line, in my opinion. It's not one individual guy consistently. It's consistently one of the guys. Consistently on this play, Banks makes a mistake. Next play, Burford makes a mistake. It's like, and then you get your rare Trent Williams penalty, and you're just like I feel like that's the issue. It's consistency. And so based on the notion that more reps and all of these things will lead to better protection, and of course, you have a quarterback too. It's protection is also tied to scheme and quarterback. And when you look at some of the sacks against TJ Watt, where you're putting a brand new starter on an island with one of the best pass rushers in the league, and you're expecting a 7-step drop to be able to develop. That's error on Kyle. I'm going to put that one on Kyle. Like you got to know better, right? You got to help your guys. You got to put your guys in a position to be successful. Putting Colton McKivitz in that situation isn't beneficial to anyone on that offense. So there's a lot of nuance that goes into offensive line play, clearly. So based on the nuance, based on my expectations, based on my assumptions, I do assume that they will improve, assuming the continuity falls in line and consistency falls in line.
Take it a step further, and nobody discusses offensive line as a cascade effect, meaning, yes, you have to start protecting, but the quarterback has to know what he's seeing, get the ball out. In a timing offense, a wide receiver has to be open. If any of those things are off in any way, it will look like your pass protection's failing. If there's a quick route to Deebo Samuel that Brock identifies, and he goes to look at it and it's taken away, and he's got to look somewhere else, now the clock is really speeding up because that was designed to get the ball out quickly. Now it's not. Now you're allowing those pass rushers to get in. It's all a cascading effect. It's wide receivers getting open. It's quarterbacks recognizing what they're seeing to get the ball out quickly. And it is the pass blocking. I think at multiple times, one of those things can be true at multiple times, right? Sometimes you'll see a sack and you'll be like, man, they're really not blocking. But there was a guy that was supposed to be open. The defense just took it away. And that's a coverage sack. Now, there's nothing you can do because you can't expect offensive linemen to block for that long. It's just not possible with the athletes that are ahead of them. Then there's other times where, maybe Brock misidentified something and now the play is dead and now someone else is coming in. So if you look at it this way, if Brock Purdy is taking steps like we think he's going to this season, then inherently the pass protection itself should get better because he's going to be able to recognize things faster. He's going to be able to recognize what to do with a free rusher, be able to recognize how to look at the offensive line and say, here's where the pressure is coming. I've got to throw the football there. If Brock Purdy is improving, it inherently has a trickle-down effect to the pass protection. And if guys are doing their job and getting open with this timing offense, that has an effect with pass protection as well, too. I understand the need and want to invest in linemen. I get that completely, 100%. But all of these things all are perfect in line with each other and have to cascade. So again, if Brock is taking these steps, that will improve the pass protection as well right off the bat. And if guys are getting open, that makes it so much easier for Brock, and it will help with the pass protection. But it is very much threefold when it comes to that. Everyone just believes that you should just be blocking for however long it takes the quarterback to get the ball out. No, some plays, the ball's got to be out. And if the ball's not out, you're going to blame the lineman for the sack. But you can look at the quarterback and say, yeah, that ball wasn't out, and that's what that. I mean, I'm not going to say that this is what Brock is, but Tom Brady was a master at knowing, all right, I know exactly what's coming. Boom, I'm getting this ball out, and I'm not even going to put my guys in a bad position. So inherently, if Brock Purdy is going to take the steps and the leap that we think he's going to, then it has a trickle-down effect on pass protection right away. So again, that continuity, again, being together in training camp, understanding all these things, the leaps that Brock can take, all of this stuff can have an effect on pass protection, and it wouldn't even be because you've changed anything on the line. It could be because of all these other factors.
Well said. So all those things combined means I saw someone ask this question earlier, and I think it kind of relates to what we were talking about. They said something along the lines of, do you take away anything from Kittle saying yesterday that we brought back our entire offense? Yeah, continuity, consistency, having a group where you've been to battle with is much easier than going into battle with a group where you have no idea how they're going to react. You have no idea how they're going to handle getting beat and have to get back on the line and go head up with that same dude who just put him on his back. You know what I mean? So it's like these guys, I think these guys are set this year, but again, there's still things that need to happen in order for us to see everything come to fruition. What do you think on special teams? So they take a step back in return coverage?
I don't even know what to expect in terms of this new kickoff thing. And I don't think we're going to see any of that in camp as well, too, with these new rules. I think that is one of the huge variables for all teams going into this season is How is this going to work? How do guys react on kickoff? Punt return, I think they'll be fine. You know, Jordan Mason is somebody that they love on punt coverage as well too. You know, I think it's too early to figure out what's going on with special team until we see in action the new kickoff rule, and we're going to see how teams are going about it, who they're going to start putting back there. So it's a little hard to say right now. If this was just a normal year and you were just doing the normal kickoff thing, I would say that, yeah, special teams has been something that's been a little bit of a point of a contention, especially with the returning for the 49ers in terms of not being able to flip the field or give really good field position in terms. Like, it just feels like you're just either taking a knee or you're just trying to get it back to the 25. There's no real feeling of, hey, we can move this thing to the 40 and really try to put our offense in a good spot. So I do think that that's something that you should be concerned about because it's something we haven't seen from the kickoff standpoint. So again, it's hard to say right there with the special team stuff, but I think they'll be fine on punts. I just want to see what this kickoff rule looks like in action. And I think we're going to see that in preseason. I don't think that Kyle's going to divulge any secrets at training camp about how they intend to use this. So I don't know if those are going to be in closed sessions, but I don't think he wants people out here seeing what he has up his sleeve since they're so secretive at 49ers camp, as you know, Brad.
It's very top secret information coming out of 49ers training camp, as always. But I think overall, like, it's that time of the year again, right? Like, we get to actually talk about football. We get to evaluate football. We get to see who's rising, who's falling, who's showing up, who's not. And I think that's probably one of the most exciting times of the year. We also got another super chat from Gammon. Got to get to this one.
Gammon's cooking. Shout out to the Mod Squad.
He is. He says, both of you are considered part of the media coverage from a fan's perspective.
Very
if
fair.
there's any defensive woes, who is first to be scapegoated?
You know that
Brandon
answer.
Staley.
Brandon Staley is going to get nailed to the cross, even though he's not the defensive coordinator, because 49er fans have been already piling on a move that really is. He's not the defensive coordinator, but yeah, it will absolutely be Brandon Staley, and then behind him will be Nick Sorensen. But you knew the answer to that when you said that, because again, I've said this before. Brandon Staley, very good defensive coordinator. The Rams in 2020 had the number one defense. Obviously, it helps when you have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, but he's a Fangio disciple, runs a lot of too high, is the godfather kind of the new way of running too high, in which you're keeping everything in front of you and you've got guys on the back end who can cover. And the 49ers seem to have that now. But him being an assistant head coach and just being a part of the defensive game plan isn't going to affect anything. And I'll point back to when Anthony Lynn was literally the same coach of the Chargers. He got fired, had a terrible time as the Chargers coach, became the running backs coach and the assistant head coach. No one batted an eye. But now that Brandon Staley here, it's got to be the worst thing in the world. Guys, I think that it's going to be fine. Like, it's going to be fine. I think the tandem of Staley and Sorensen is going to be fine. But if you're asking who's the first person that everybody's going to run to, it won't even be the defensive coordinator, the first-time guy, Nick Sorensen. It for sure is going to be Brandon Staley, and I will put a lot of money up on that one.
Yeah, it sounds like you and I have seen a lot of the fan discourse around Brandon Staley. So, yeah, I agree. It would feel like something similar to that. Gammon says fans will blame Staley. Will media blame Kyle? It depends on exactly what Kyle does, I would say.
Nope, I don't think the media will. Again, look, for everything that has been said about Kyle stepped in last season and was like, hey, Wilkes, we need to fix this. Like, I've got to get in on this. So not only is he wearing,
I think he was pretty much the defensive coordinator last year.
Pretty much, like, towards the end of the season, like he
was doing defensive adjustments.
Right.
Like,
so
game.
So he's got the personnel hat on. He's the one who decides who's up and down every week, right? He's got the offensive hat on, and now he's like, well, let me get over there on defense as well.
All right, too. I guess I'm running the defense.
Kyle's trying, man. It's not for lack of trying. I'll be honest. So the fans will definitely blame Staley, but there was that stretch last season, starting with the Jacksonville game, where the defense started to look much like the defense we thought it would, off of the 3-game losing streak. How much of that has to do with Kyle, right? Like, how much of that has to do with, like, how much he helped? And again, early on in the playoffs, Green Bay comes out of the gate quickly. Detroit comes out of the gate quickly. What are the adjustments at halftime? How much was Kyle involved in that? I don't think we know. So I think, again, it still falls in the lap of the head coach, because when the team wins, they don't go to the defensive coordinator or the offensive coordinator and say, hey, man, great game or whatever. The head coach has to stand there. He has to take care of everything. That's why they pay him the big bucks. So I don't know if they'll blame him, but Kyle definitely needs to have a hand in this one way or another.
I actually think I have an interesting evolution to this question. I think Kyle has earned the respect across the league of, other football coaches, other players. He's spoken very highly amidst circles of people who you would say know ball. But from a fan perspective, I think the way last year ended might have kind of sucked some of those resources of benefit of the doubt away. And this is just my honest take, just the way I've seen the fans talk about Kyle throughout the offseason. I do think more so than ever, fans are in a put up or shut up mode. And that does translate to Kyle. I think it does. It translates to everyone. I think everyone. I think the 49er fan base is so tortured that they will eat alive anyone on that team, coaching staff, general manager, front office, players, if they don't perform and execute. I just think that's where we're at. Like, I think that's with how torturous it's been. I just think I think a large portion of fans see it as, if we can't get over the top, I'm ready for the next. Even though I don't necessarily agree with that thought process, I don't think that's how you build long-term sustaining success. I think that's where a lot of fans are. They're impatient. I think the patience has run thin with some. And again, if the year turns on its head, you know what's going to happen. Kyle's going to have everyone coming at him if that season turns on its head, because I do think the patience has run thin. For whether you agree or disagree for the reasons, I just think that's the case. That's my read on the fan base right now.
This is going to be the most anxiety-ridden season that we've been through for a long time, based off the back of that Super Bowl loss, right? Again, it was Steve Young that said Super Bowl windows don't close. They either widen or they narrow. And this does feel like this current group, for one reason or another, when you have Brock, you're going to be fine. The offense is going to be good. And you have, your cornerstone pieces on offense, it's going to be some roster turnover. And I think 49er fans are just tired of hearing you have the best roster in football. You have 4 top 10 players. And it's just like, man, who cares? Win it all. Like, finally finish it. So I think that's kind of just where fans are, and I don't blame them. Now, does that necessarily mean that if it doesn't go that way, because it is very hard to win Super Bowls, obviously, unless you're Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, does that mean that Kyle's got to go? I don't think that Jed York has got the finger on the button for him, or anything like that. Like, I don't think that he's going anywhere. No, but I completely understand fans' frustrations of everyone automatically praising them. You have one of the best rosters of football, all the best roster in football, 4 top 10 guys, and look what you're able to do, and all the offense. Yeah, win it. Like, I think that's going to be the mode, and a lot of the fan base's thought process based on the way that this has kind of gone, and feeling frustrated because the 49ers do know. I mean, the 49er fans do know that they have the best roster in football. They do have the best players at certain places. It's less about hearing that you have the best roster. We know. Please just find a way to get it done and get over the hump. That's it.
Yep, and I do think one Super Bowl win buys Kyle Shanahan minimum 10 years, like instantly. Like, oh, he's not. Yeah. He's going to be the next quarterback, next coach.
A Super Bowl win means he's not going anywhere for a long time.
Yeah, a long time. Long time. Right. But again, we understand the outside pressure can bust pipes. So we'll have to see what happens. Gam says, why can't we win the Super Bowl? What are we missing? Well, that's all.
Patrick Mahomes.
That's a nuanced conversation.
Patrick Mahomes.
First of all, I think we all understand how difficult it is to get to the Super Bowl. And second of all, you have to execute. It's really what it comes down to. And I think in certain moments, didn't execute. Like, that's what, when we look at that game, you go back to we didn't execute here. We didn't execute against Chris Jones. We didn't execute the fumble. We didn't execute on punt return. We didn't it's execution. You got to play your best in the biggest moments. You got to be most consistent in the biggest moments. So I don't think we're missing anything. I just think it's, again, circumstance and opportunity and consistency and execution, right? All the things that we've essentially said about every single person that we've talked about today.
And not having a punt go off your foot, not fumbling in the red zone, right? Like it's all these things that add up in a long game, like in the Super Bowl. So yeah, what's missing? I'm not sure, but I know that fumbling in the red zone doesn't help. I know that when you're stopping Patrick Mahomes, having a punt go off someone's foot, unfortunately, and leading to a touchdown on the next play, that's not going to help your prospects. Having a miscommunication between Burford and the offensive line and allowing Chris Jones to run in on Brock Purdy and what it would have been a walk-in touchdown to Jawan Jennings, those are all circumstances that lead to you losing. And, when you get an interception and you go backwards, it's all these little things that you could point to that literally add up to why the 49ers weren't able to get it done. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what we're missing, if you want to really drill it down, is not giving up leads, maintaining leads. That's it. Like it's such a it's such a finite thing when you say, what are we missing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, objectively, we're not missing anything. We have this team can go back to the Super Bowl, but that doesn't mean that they're going to, because you have to play a whole 17-game season and then you have to go through the playoffs. Anything can happen at any given moment. Injuries. There's so many variables.
Dre Greenlaw gets hurt. Dre Greenlaw gets hurt in the Super Bowl, right? Like
that was a huge killer. There's so many variables. So that's why I think as the 49ers could be constructed, they're constructed to compete for a Super Bowl. And that's what you want. That doesn't guarantee you're going to win the Super Bowl.
No.
And even so, like, look at the undefeated Tom Brady-led Patriots. They lost the Super Bowl. Arguably one of the greatest seasons we have ever seen by any team in this sport. They didn't win the Super Bowl. Just like the Warriors. The greatest regular season we have ever seen by a team. Perfection personified. They didn't win when it mattered most. It's hard, man. It's hard.
Yeah.
I don't think anything is missing. I think this team is built. It just has to be realized. It has to be executed. And it sounds simple, but we understand there's a ton of nuance built into that.
Right. And then again, health luck. The 49ers they missed Trent Williams and Debo for a little while, but for the most part, everybody was healthy. And then the Greenlaw thing happens in the Super Bowl. That's another domino that falls. So there's a lot of luck, and there's a lot. Oh, you know what? Why wouldn't I go back to my guns right now, like, and just go ahead and say that, the 49ers are about to win it all and they're going to break through and kick down the door finally? Like, it would be one of the better stories, obviously, in football history, because how many teams have actually lost the first year and then gone back the next year and kicked down the door? So, yeah, you know what, man? If it was easy, then we wouldn't be 49er fans. So at this point, like, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do but be optimistic at this point, especially July 24th. But no more injuries, guys. Everybody just go to training camp, catch passes, don't hurt each other, and let's get this thing rolling.
Absolutely. So tomorrow, first day of training camp, I'll be there. Hopefully we're going to be able to get Jason out there one of these days. But I'm really excited to be able to get eyes on practice, kind of get my feel for who's balling and who's not, all those different types of things. So I'm really excited to talk about that tomorrow and be able to see the vibes out there in Santa Clara. Before we get out of here, anything that you wanted to touch on before we dip ski for today?
No, again, it's just good to be talking about football again. I think we're a lot closer to a resolution on the Brandon Aiyuk thing. The Trent Williams thing is probably just going to sort itself out. Not too worried about that at all. I mean, for all the talk, I mean, Trent was probably getting almost every other day off anyway. I don't think that he's
That's
somebody who benefits.
That's actually a really good point.
I don't think he really benefits from training camp or anything like that. I think he's just a get him ready for game day type of guy, right? Like that. That's something that's just a constant. So yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction. There's positive vibes on the way, and it's just good to be back talking about actual football. And I'm excited to hear what you have to say, because I trust your football opinion tomorrow, and I trust what you see, and you know what you see, and you know what's happening, what it's supposed to look like. And the sweeping statements won't come, with one play and just like, oh, this guy stinks. Like, you're not like that. So I appreciate your football acumen, and I'm looking forward to, getting your thoughts and everything, because I'm gonna base a lot of what I have to say based off you and other people that I really admire in terms of football IQ.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, we learned last year that you can get a lot of different opinions out of seeing the same things. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward, and that's why I can't wait to get back and be
Yeah.
able to see what we got cooking. But appreciate
Mhm.
everyone for tapping in. It's been a while for State of the Franchise, but I'm sure we'll get kicking up here on a regular basis as the season gets started. Make sure you go over to Jason's channel, like to his channel and video, do the same to mine. And we will be coming back to you guys with more 49ers content. And hey, tomorrow's going to be exciting. You're going to have fans in the stands. The energy will be up. So looking forward to it. But I appreciate all you guys in the meantime. And we are out for now. Peace. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now.